My boss, Jim Wright, instructed me to take a brief tour of the hotel to assess the extent of the necessary electrical upgrades. I moved stealthily around the pool, making sure no one noticed my efforts to capture all the details I could. That's when I spotted a red-haired woman in her 40s conversing with a man clearly younger than her. They brought their chairs closer, and the man placed his hand on her left knee. At that moment, I quickly retreated from the pool, feeling relieved. Only when I was out of sight from the vacationers by the pool did I take out my mobile phone and send a brief message to my boss. Then I carefully returned to the pool area, trying to blend in. I positioned myself in the shade of the upper balcony with the camera screen of my phone activated. I counted slowly to 25 and began recording the scene I had noticed earlier. Now, the woman was reclining on a sun lounger with her blouse unbuttoned, while the man slowly applied sunscreen to her back, paying special attention to the impressive area of her chest that stood out. Her lower torso was exposed. I had only recorded a few seconds of video when an evidently enraged man approached the couple, grabbed a handful of the man's hair, and cruelly yanked his head back. I heard the distinct sound of impact when the angry man's fist struck Romeo, the man who had been courting the sensual red-haired woman just moments ago. He now lay by the pool emitting dreadful sounds. Everything happened so quickly that the woman barely had time to look around and see an infuriated man rubbing his fist as he watched her. It only lasted a few seconds before he grabbed her red curls. Jim was all he managed to say before he pulled her to her feet by her hair. I kept recording. "You're a fallen woman," was all he managed to say, looking at his wife's panicked face and then her exposed breasts. For a moment, I was afraid he would hit her, but fortunately, he controlled his anger and simply pushed her back into the pool. Then, he tossed several plastic chairs off the terrace before noticing me standing to the side. He visibly faltered and then clumsily headed in my direction. "Mike, take me to the truck before I end up in jail," and that was all he could say as tears streamed down his cheeks. I drove Jim to the company's van in the parking lot. By that point, he had become a genuine zombie. As we drove on the highway, he showed no emotion and stared straight ahead. The 2-hour journey back home passed in eerie silence, except for the occasional guttural sounds escaping Jim's throat. I parked in the driveway and accompanied him to his house. Jim sat at the kitchen table as I retrieved 2 beers from the fridge. I placed one in front of him and took the other for myself. Then, I sat in the chair across from him. His unwavering gaze made me more than a little uncomfortable. I looked into his eyes for a few seconds before asking, "Did we get the contract?" Jim blinked at my question and suddenly burst into laughter. "You," he murmured as he opened the beer and took a long sip. Maybe my question was silly, but it snapped Jim out of his trance. "This woman told me she was going to spend a few days with her mother at her parents' lake house. She left yesterday morning. She's probably been with this Harris since yesterday. I called her mother's cabin this morning and asked to speak with Kelly, her mother. She told me she was in the shower but would have her call in a few minutes. Kelly called about 10 minutes later. If she was in her mother's lake cabin at 10 in the morning, there's no way she could have made it to Timber by the time you found her with this Harris. And this indicates that her mother was covering for her. Which means her mother knew what Kelly was up to and was covering for her." Jim repeated my words. "She's been visiting her mother's cabin every summer since we got married. Now I have to wonder how long this has been going on and whether Harris was the first or just one more." Jim had an interesting perspective, and I considered it from every possible angle as I drove home. It seemed possible, even probable, that Jim's wife was being assisted and covered up by her own mother. It could be an inherited trait or simply a weakness that has been nurtured for generations. When I arrived at the driveway, I saw my mother-in-law's car. I didn't want to hear her nonsense. So, I parked and went to the back door, knowing that my wife Tracy would be sitting at the kitchen table drinking wine with her mother, as usual. I was right. The only thing I didn't expect was the volume of the conversation. Well, to be honest, both the intensity and the content of the conversation were a bit shocking. "Mom," Tracy almost shouted at her mother, "do you know how much Dad hates Harris?" What were you thinking? I couldn't help but feel a little proud of Tracy's outrage at her mother's actions. She and I had vowed to be faithful throughout our married life. Tracy and I were definitely on the same page on this issue. It was an accident. Besides, he's still quite capable, Kelly insisted. It wasn't an accident, Tracy responded. You were walking in broad daylight with another man instead of Dad, and just 2 hours away from home. I warned you not to let your guard down, but you did. Anyway, I thought we were far enough from home to be safe. I don't know why Dad was there and how he found us at the pool. He never goes to hotels, let alone their pools. Do you think he's cheating on us? No, I don't believe so, Tracy replied. Dad adores you. He would never cheat, and I'm sure he had no idea you were being unfaithful. That's why his reaction was so violent. He must have been shocked to see Bentley applying lotion to your large breasts. Bentley only applied lotion to the sides of my chest, Kelly said. He was a true gentleman. I'm sure he was. Her father hit him in the throat and then broke his jaw for no reason. How are you going to handle this, Mom? Dad seems to be suddenly angry. I'd like to stay with you for a few days until Dad calms down, if you don't mind. You know how much Jim adores me. He'll survive this little mistake. Maybe until he finds out about your other mistakes, Tracy suggested. You know it wouldn't have ended well. Did Kelly make other mistakes? What did Tracy call them? My wife knew about them. She didn't seem very surprised that her mother was with that man. This information was unsettling. Not wanting them to know I was in the house listening to their conversation, I quietly exited through the back door and went around to the front of the house. Mother and daughter fell silent. As soon as the door opened, I nodded to the now silent duo. I went to the fridge and grabbed a beer. I realized that I had no idea how much they knew about the day's events and were waiting for me to somehow show my knowledge. But I turned around and went upstairs to take a shower. They should have been interested in how much I knew, how I would react, what I would say, and whom I would tell. However, I decided to leave them in uncertainty. The whole situation was unpleasant, and Tracy's role in it was unsettling. It seemed to me that Tracy obviously knew her mother was promiscuous but never mentioned it to her father or me. Keeping such a secret was the same as lying, as far as I could understand. I had just finished changing when Tracy entered the room. Mom and Dad had a little fight today. Mom wants to stay with us for a few days until they work things out. I told her I agreed. I hope you don't mind. What kind of husband would I be if I opposed my wife's mother staying for a few days? I asked rhetorically. Your parents deserve special attention. Look at how kind your father was to me. He's really a great guy. Tracy seemed to study my face for any hints of my feelings when I mentioned her father. She flinched slightly. Or maybe it was just my imagination. That's one of the reasons I love you so much, Mike. You always treat my family like we're special, Tracy replied. I've been working with your father for 5 years. I knew him before I met you, and he's special. He gave me my first real job. He's a good boss, a great father-in-law, and the best father a girl could have. For some reason, Tracy didn't seem to like my praise for her father as much. I had never noticed this before, but now it seemed to me that Tracy felt some guilt about her mother's extramarital affairs. It's just that I hadn't noticed it before. Kelly spent half of dinner asking me questions about work. She wanted to know what projects we were working on, what we were betting on, and where I had worked that day. It was clear she was trying to figure out how much I knew and how Jim had ended up at the same hotel where she had ordered a special dish with Bentley the previous night. I avoided any mention that Jim had been requested to do the improvements at the hotel. I decided that my wife and her mother weren't the only ones who might have secrets. After dinner, I announced that I was going to mow the lawn, while my suspicions dominated my thoughts. I secretly set my phone to record on the kitchen table, away from the dishwasher. It was getting dark when I finished mowing. Both women were watching TV in the living room. I put the phone in my pocket and bid them goodnight before heading up to the master bedroom. Then, I listened to a recorded conversation between my wife and my mother. After I left home to say it softly, it opened my eyes. The two women conspired to get Jim's forgiveness. They came up with some ideas, but basically, it all boiled down to Kelly sleeping with Jim for as long as it took for him to fully forgive and trust his wife. I've never been unfaithful to Mike, Tracy said. I want Mike to be the father of all our children. That's the only thing I'll take care of. I love this guy. I love your father too, that's why everything is so complicated. I don't want a divorce, Kelly insisted. He just works long hours and comes home very tired. We're lucky if we sleep a couple of times a week. That's why I really needed Bentley. Mom, and what about George Mars, Jeff Stevens, and God knows who else? I don't like how this conversation is unfolding, Kelly said in an apparent attempt to change the subject. She had a lot to think about. The work the next day was exhausting. Jim was a mess when he handed out the work assignments to start the day. There were 5 of us working at Wright Electric, and we exchanged glances as Jim dived into his instructions, as usual. Jim and I were working together on our current project, so he got into the passenger seat of the company van. We were doing electrical installations in a house under construction, so we could speak freely without worrying about anyone overhearing us. As soon as Jim started telling me his situation, he didn't stop talking all morning. I suppose it was cathartic for him, but it only further confused my state of mind. I found it difficult to reconcile what I had heard from my wife and her mother with the future I imagined. Would Tracy end up becoming an unfaithful wife, just like her mother and presumably her grandmother? Was it worth risking a failed marriage or living the life of a cuckold? Kelly called me this morning, Jim began. She said she wanted to apologize for possibly giving me the impression that she was sleeping with Bentley. She calls him Bentley. She said it was the only time she had been with another man or even come close to it. He pursued her for months and finally won her over with his charm, scoring a stunning goal. I asked her how long her mother had been covering up her affairs, and she started to stammer. It never occurred to her that it was obvious to me that her mother was lying about her whereabouts. We exchanged some unpleasant words, and I hung up. I didn't know if I should give Jim the information I had obtained from my eavesdropping. If he decided to make amends, it would only make the situation worse. I decided to give him time to decide for himself, but I did so decisively. Jim, you need to take your time and figure out what's really going on. Maybe it was the first time, and maybe it wasn't. I suggest you think about the situation and weigh all the consequences of your decision, whether you leave Kelly or put her on the back burner. I'm really sorry for what you're going through, Mike. You're married to my daughter, but you work with me. So, you're in the middle of this mess. I feel like I've wasted 25 years of my life. If it weren't for Tracy, I'd say my married life has been a meaningless farce. Having a wonderful daughter and a reliable son-in-law is the only saving grace. I was still undecided about my next course of action. When I returned home that evening, as soon as I entered the kitchen, Tracy and her mother attacked me from all sides. Dad told Mom that it was you who told him that Mom was at the pool with a guy named Bentley, Tracy stated with great anger. What kind of idiot would try to ruin his in-law's marriage? Seriously, and what do you think I should have done? I asked more calmly than I felt. You could have told me that Jim was nearby and gotten out of the pool, Kelly interjected. That would have been gentlemanly. I was afraid you would miss the pleasure of Bentley massaging you in public. I was only thinking of you, I replied. My fault that you and your mother lied to Jim that you slept with some lunatic. It's a miracle that Jim punched an arrogant guy cold and that you're trying to cause a lot of trouble for one of the best guys I've ever known. Did you know that your grandmother lied to Jim? I asked. This just keeps getting worse and worse. You have no idea how bad it is, I said. You knew your mother and grandmother were dishonest, and yet you lied to help them maintain this status. Now all of you are angry with me because your mother was foolish enough to let you play with her in public, as if it were my fault. I'm going to stick to my decision to be honest and straightforward with Jim, while you two try to justify what you've been doing to your father and your grandfather all these years. I could see the concern on Tracy's face as she considered my words. I've never been unfaithful to you, and I never would be. I'm not like Mom and Grandma. I tried to help them keep their secrets, but I didn't like it. I told them to stop having affairs and be faithful to their husbands. You said that, Kelly asked. Before Tracy could measure her response, Kelly suddenly chimed in, oh yes, that's what she said. I made a mistake by letting Bentley seduce me, but it will never happen again. I've learned my lesson, I swear. George Mars and Jeff Stevens had good equipment too, or were just extremely convincing. I blurted out before I could control my mouth. Tracy, did you tell me about George and turn your back on me to save yourself? Kelly demanded. How could Mike find out about them if you didn't tell him? Oh no. So Kelly ran away. Did you tell Jim about George and Bill Siemens? Jim also knows about him. I still didn't respond with a smile. The next workday turned out to be interesting because of all the decisions that were changing their lives. I told Jim everything I had heard. What his wife and daughter were talking about. He was angry and then incredibly depressed. I don't see another option, Jim. I'm going to contact a lawyer and get a divorce. Don't try to dissuade me, it wouldn't occur to me, I replied somberly. I thought we could use the same lawyer and maybe get a higher fee, but Tracy said she never cheated on you, Jim objected. You have no reason to divorce Tracy, she loves you. I know. I know that Kelly loves you, and I wouldn't try to dissuade you from a divorce. It's you who helped me make the decision, Jim. If I didn't have your wisdom and experience, I might be tempted to stay with Tracy. You told me in the end you had wasted 25 years married to a sham. I don't want to be in the same situation in 23 years. I no longer have confidence in your daughter. I would spend every day worried that she's looking for an older man. I know perfectly well that Tracy will insist on letting Kelly and Kelly's mother see our children and influence their lives. Leaving Tracy alone with my daughters would make me uncomfortable, but even letting your wife and her mother talk to them scares me, I confessed. Do you understand why I can't continue down this path, right? 4 years later, I decided to invite my wife Amber to celebrate our second anniversary. Our daughter Megan was 6 months old, and Amber's parents were more than happy to babysit for the night. Since it was our anniversary, I splurged on a room at the Ritz Hotel, which was nearly 100 miles away. I had booked a table for dinner and was looking forward to showing my wife how much her love meant to me. I requested a private table and was pleased when we were taken to a rather dim corner of the dining room. After ordering our food and making some jokes, Amber suddenly straightened up and looked at the entrance. Isn't that your ex-wife? She asked. Who is that? I remember she was 2 years older than me in school and looked like a model. She's still beautiful. I heard she got married again, but I never saw her husband. He seems a bit older than her. In fact, he's the same age as Tracy, I replied, turning to see my ex-wife sitting on the other side of the room. Well, she's had a rough life then. She looks old enough to be her father, commented Amber. Isn't he her husband? Is it Harris? I replied with a sigh. I made the right decision. Being with you for the past 4 years and seeing Tracy now fills me with joy. What's her husband like? Amber asked when her curiosity was piqued. He looks exactly like the guy who just walked in with a baseball bat, I replied, mentally thanking my luck. Story 2. I met my girlfriend at a party a mutual friend was throwing a Halloween party 6 years ago. She went and dressed up as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I thought it was a brilliant costume, so we started talking about it. The two of us connected right away, and we ended up leaving the party together. We had an amazing night together, and from there, I asked her out again. I thought we were perfect for each other. She was everything I wanted in a partner and more. We had been dating for about 2 years when I asked her to move in with me. Ever since then, things have been better than ever. She was very career-focused, but she was unfortunately laid off from her job at the beginning of the pandemic. Her company had to make a lot of cutbacks, and her department was eliminated entirely. She took it very hard, but I was there for her the entire time. I had a good job, so it wasn't impossible for me to take care of both of us. Of course, there were some adjustments to be made, but we managed to get through them. We had several friends in common, though we both had our own friends outside of those. Neither of us really felt like we needed to be best friends with each other's friends because we had our own lives outside of each other. With that being said, most of her friends did like me, and I got along well with them in return. but she just had one friend that I couldn't shake the feeling didn't care for me. Let's call her Claire. I had never done anything to Claire to make her dislike me, but there was just something off between us. My girlfriend would go out with her friends often, and whenever I heard that Claire was going along, I got a little nervous. I was faithful and honest with my girlfriend, but part of me worried that Claire might be putting something in her ear to affect our relationship. Maybe that was just my anxiety, though, when I asked my girlfriend about her, she told me that Claire didn't dislike me, but she thought I was different from the type of guys she usually went after. I knew that before my girlfriend was with me, she had dated a lot of very athletic and dominant type men. I wasn't really like that. I preferred to stay home with her and watch movies or television shows, and most of my time spent with friends was through gaming. I didn't think that would be a reason to dislike me, though. I let it roll off my shoulders and didn't worry about it. I was confident that my girlfriend loved me, so it didn't matter to me what one of her friends thought, especially considering that all of her other friends really liked me. Some time passed, and I hadn't even thought about it. However, my girlfriend was acting a lot differently. She'd always been very into her fitness, so spending a lot of time at the gym wasn't unusual, but I started to notice that she spent a lot more time there than usual. She was going to the gym twice a day and closely monitoring her caloric intake. She was completely perfect in my eyes, and she most definitely was not overweight in any way. Honestly, I was somewhat worried about it because it seemed almost obsessive. She talked to me about the diet she was on and how she wanted to transition to a raw vegan lifestyle, which I wasn't too happy about. Going vegan required a lot of changes and research that I couldn't commit to. It seemed like all of these changes came out of nowhere, and I didn't understand why she was so adamant about them all of a sudden. I didn't think that these changes were because she was cheating on me. I thought that maybe, if anything, she might have seen a documentary that spoke to her or something. A few months after she told me she was making that change, I saw her at the cafe around the corner from my job during my lunch hour. She was there with another man I didn't recognize. He was tall and extremely muscular, and he was clearly interested in her. She was facing away from me, so I couldn't tell if she was reciprocating that, though. I was nervous about why she was at the cafe with this man to begin with. When I left in the morning, I had just been told that she would be going to the gym and spending time at home. I walked over to them and said hello, waiting for my girlfriend to introduce us. I think she instantly recognized my suspicion, and she quickly told me that he was one of the trainers from the gym. She said that he was vegan, and they were talking about some recipes and changes that she planned to implement in the coming weeks. They asked me to join them, and I did. After sitting with them while they talked about nutrition for a while, I felt like my suspicions were eased. I mean, why would my girlfriend invite me to sit down with her and the man she was cheating on me with? When I got home later that night, she explained what happened in more detail before I even asked. She said that they were just talking at the gym and decided to grab lunch to chat more and that it was nothing at all. Honestly, I was kind of torn about that reaction. Was she telling me that because she wanted to assure me that nothing was really happening, or did she tell me that because there was something going on and she needed to get ahead of it? I decided it would be best to trust her, so I just told her it was okay, but to let me know before she has lunch with some random man again. We laughed it off, and she assured me that it wouldn't happen again. The weeks went by, and she started to withdraw from me. We still spent time together, though it was nothing like it was before. I only saw her for a couple of hours in the morning and later in the evening after she got back from the gym. At that point, both of us were too tired to talk, much less do anything else. We practically stopped having sex. After a while, anytime I would try to initiate anything, she would tell me that she was really sore from the gym or she was tired and wanted to get up early. I felt like I was just being dismissed by her, and I didn't like it. She actually came home one night before I got back from work, and we had dinner together. It was the first night in a while that we ate together, and I was happy about it. At least I was happy until she got a call halfway through dinner and left to answer it outside. At that point, I would have been foolish not to wonder if something was going on. I thought about the man from the cafe right away, and I felt like an idiot for brushing it off so easily. I couldn't help but think that I walked in on a date without even realizing it. Later that night, she was in the shower, and I took the opportunity to look for evidence that something was going on in her phone. The first thing that I did was call the recent number that had shown up during dinner. After a couple of rings, a man answered the phone. He said he couldn't wait any longer and then laughed. I didn't say anything in response, which prompted him to say my girlfriend's name as if he was waiting for her to reply. I had really been hoping it was some toll collector or scam calls, so I didn't know what to say. I just stayed quiet, hoping he would hang up after a minute, thinking that it was just a butt dial. Thankfully, that's what happened. I looked through the messages and found a lot of evidence that they had been sleeping together almost every night for the past several weeks. It was the guy from the cafe, and they had been staying late at the gym to sleep with each other after it closed. One thing that really caught my eye about their messages was how the guy said that he was glad Claire introduced them. My blood was boiling when I read that. I always knew that Claire didn't like me, but I didn't think she would actively encourage my girlfriend to have an affair. I opened up their text messages and searched for the name of the guy, and I saw the conversation with my own eyes. Claire had texted my girlfriend about this cute guy who worked at the gym she went to. She told her that he was just my girlfriend's type. At first, my girlfriend told her that she was happy in her relationship. A couple of days later, Claire sent my girlfriend a picture of herself in the mirror at the gym with a man standing behind her with a large red circle drawn around him. She told her that was the guy she had been talking about. Then she said that she showed him a picture of her, and he was down to go out. My girlfriend told her that she didn't want to at first. The following day, my girlfriend asked her if she had a guest pass for her gym. Then they started talking about how cute the guy was. Claire had actively encouraged my girlfriend to cheat on me with this guy from the gym. I put the phone away and pretended like I didn't know anything about it for the next couple of days. I needed to find a way to get back at my girlfriend for humiliating me. Not only did she cheat on me, but she cheated on me, and then I sat at the table with her and the man she was sleeping with. The only thing I could think to do was to get the guy fired from the gym. From there, I could break up with my girlfriend and kick her out of my apartment. She didn't have a job, and she had been relying on me for support, so I was going to take that away from her. The first time after I found out about the affair and my girlfriend texted me, telling me she was going to stay at the gym later, I took that opportunity to make sure they got caught. From the research that I did on the gym, I found out that it was just a small family-owned business. The owner's information was on their website, so after they closed and I knew that my girlfriend was still inside having sex with the guy, I called him. I told him that I had left my house keys inside the gym and I desperately needed them. He was super helpful and came back to let me in. When he opened the door, he saw that a lot of the lights were on when they shouldn't have been. He was cursing under his breath as he walked through the gym to properly close down. I heard yelling come from somewhere in the back, where I can only assume he walked in on his employee having sex with my girlfriend. Moments later, my girlfriend ran out of the back room with her shirt on backward and saw me. Shortly after that, the man came out carrying a camera and a tripod. Apparently, they had been filming all of their encounters. I just left, and my girlfriend chased behind me, trying to explain what happened. I let her explain because I wanted to hear how ridiculous it sounded. She tried to make it seem like I was the problem. Everything she said were things that I had no doubt Claire had put in her head. She said that I wasn't exciting and that I didn't know how to please her, but she never talked to me about any of that. I kicked her out of my apartment, and she went to stay with Claire. I found out later on through some mutual friends that she tried dating the guy from the gym for a while, but they ended up not working out. Neither of them had jobs after that point, and it put a lot of stress on their relationship. On top of that, they had been filming their time together, and they posted the videos online. Their faces were blurred out, but she had definitely posted them on the internet. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through something like this. It seems like you were really putting in the effort in your relationship, and your girlfriend wasn't interested in doing the same. Claire seems like a terrible person who had no business sticking her nose in your relationship. It's such a shame that your girlfriend let her get in her head. The fact that your girlfriend was so willing to film herself having sex with a virtual stranger and post it online without telling you is pretty telling. She just seems like a very selfish person, and anybody in a relationship should speak to their partner about things like that first. Blaming you for her affair is a classic cheater move, but I assure you none of this was your fault. If she was really unhappy, she could have come to you and discussed her sex life, and you could have worked on it together. I really hope you're able to move on from this. It sounds like your girlfriend wasn't a good match for you, and I wish you the best moving forward. I hope you find someone who will respect you. Story 3. My wife and I recently celebrated our 5-year wedding anniversary. She and I have been together since our senior year of college. I had actually never met her until we were in the same thesis class. We sat near each other, and I thought she was cute, so one day, I struck up a conversation and asked her out. Our relationship quickly evolved, and we both knew that we had something that not a lot of people found. We ended up graduating and moving in together within a year. One thing that both of us really wanted out of life was a big family. We had talked a lot about wanting to have at least 3 children, probably more. The first step for us in getting started with them was to get ahead financially so we could provide for them. We got married and worked our butts off to be able to put a significant amount of money into savings to start a family. We put a down payment on a house, bought the furniture that we needed, and we started trying for a family. Everything in our life was going exactly how we wanted it to. We were thrilled to be happily starting such an incredible journey together. We had been trying for a baby for about 6 months, and we had no luck. At the time, we weren't in a huge rush for it, so we were trying not to stress out and just enjoy the time we spent trying. After a year of trying with no success, we decided that we needed to see a fertility specialist to figure out what the issue was and how to move on from it. When I went into my physical, I was quickly told by the doctor that it was likely my fault that we couldn't get pregnant. When I was a teenager, I had a brain tumor. My family did everything in their power to help me, and part of that included radiation therapy. At the time, I don't think my parents or myself were very concerned with my reproductive health. We very much wanted to make sure the tumor was gone, so we did what we had to. Now, as an adult, I'm learning that I will never be able to father my children because of it. When I left my physical, I had to break that news to my wife, and she took it very hard. We both wanted a family more than anything, and I wasn't going to be able to give that to her. Though we still had options, and I was trying to excite her about those. After I told her about that, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was mad at me. I didn't want to believe that was the case because it was just as heartbreaking for me as it was for her to find out. I could tell that she viewed me differently than she did before. I did everything in my power to try and bring things back to normal between us. I loved her more than anything in the world, and I didn't want to lose her over this. We had options, and we could work through them to still be happy. Not long before we started trying for a baby, we bought our own house. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, so we were working on it while living in it. There were only a few things that really needed to be taken care of. One of the biggest issues with the house was how the plumbing was very iffy. I could do some things like repair drywall and install cabinets, but we needed to hire a certified plumber to look at the house. My wife took care of that while I focused on other aspects of renovating the house. She hired the plumber and dealt with him most of the time. She told me one evening that the plumber was going to be coming over the next day. She had already met with him several times before, but I hadn't met him yet. I had already planned to take the day off work because I was expecting a large delivery that I needed to bring in. When I met him, it was difficult not to feel a little jealous. He was a good-looking guy, and on top of that, he seemed to be a little chummy with my wife. I started talking to him about the work he'd been doing, and I quickly brushed off my insecurities and told myself that it was just professional between them. Things started to get back to normal between my wife and me. We were spending more time together, and we had even started having sex again. It was much less frequent than it was when we were actively trying to have a child, but I was still happy to be having it in general. One night, she and I were just sitting on the couch and watching a couple of movies when she rushed off into the bathroom and threw up. Neither of us thought it was possible for her to be pregnant, so we assumed she had food poisoning, but it kept happening. She went to the doctor, and they were able to confirm that she was pregnant. I didn't understand how it happened. I had been told that I wasn't able to have children, yet my wife was pregnant. It was hard for me to think this, but I thought it was a miracle. My wife wasn't as happy as I thought she would be. I assumed she would be over the moon when she got the news, but she seemed almost distressed by it. She was withdrawing from me again, and I could tell that there was something seriously wrong with her. I was worried that she wasn't feeling all right because of the pregnancy, and I was asking her all the time if there was anything I could do. She started to make very secretive phone calls and hide her phone from me when she wasn't using it. I started to think that something serious was going on. I didn't want to look into it because I was afraid I was going to get hurt, but I knew that I had to. I was able to get a quick look at her phone while she had taken a nap one afternoon, and I found information that completely shattered my heart. Of course, it was the plumber all the time that he had been home with her while I was at work. They were sleeping together. It had been happening since my wife found out that I couldn't father a child. In one of the messages just hours after we found out that she was pregnant, she messaged him and told him that she was pretty sure it was his. I felt like the world had completely fallen out from under my feet. I thought having a child would be impossible for me, and I was so happy when I thought it was happening. I was just a fool to believe that it was mine. The worst part about it was that the plumber didn't really want to be a part of anything. He suggested just telling me that it was mine. My wife agreed that would be the best option. I couldn't deal with my wife after learning about that. If she was going to have another man's baby and then pretend like it was mine, she wasn't the woman that I knew. I was going to divorce her, but I didn't know what to do because she was pregnant. It felt wrong to leave her while she was carrying a child, and I didn't want to leave her a single mother. My wife caught me while I was looking through her phone. She bolted up and grabbed it from my hands, and I just stared at her. She knew right away by the look in my eyes what I had found. She tried to explain herself by saying that she was in a very vulnerable state, and he was there. She thought less of me for a while because I couldn't give her a child. I told her that no matter what, we were over. There was still a very slim chance the child was mine, so I wanted to have a DNA test done. If it was mine, we would deal with joint custody and figure that out. If it wasn't mine, I was out of her life completely. She reached out to the plumber and told him about it, and he agreed to give us the mouth swab that we needed to perform the test. When my wife was 8 weeks pregnant, we went in to have it done officially. The results came back that the plumber was the father. She told him, and he was less than ecstatic. It felt truly awful to leave her, but I didn't really have a choice. It wasn't my child, and I couldn't stand being around my wife after she said what she did. So, I divorced her, and because of her affair, I didn't have to give her anything. After the baby was born, I tried to stay out of my wife's life. She had moved back in with her parents so they could help her with childcare while she worked. Apparently, the plumber had decided he didn't want anything to do with either of them and chose not to pay child support like he was supposed to. I didn't want anything to do with my wife when I heard about that. I was frustrated. I reported him to the authorities for failure to pay child support, and he was forced to pay it with back pay. I have a lot of things to deal with personally now. It's hard for me to trust people enough to want to get involved with another woman. On top of that, I have to worry about never being able to start my own family. I think the best thing for me at the moment is just to take some time to be single and figure out what it is that I want out of life. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. It's really sad how she turned her back on you after you were both given bad news about your chances to conceive. There are plenty of options for couples who can't have children of their own, and it seemed like your ex-wife didn't really want to pursue any of those. It isn't fair for her to put any of the blame on you for what happened when you were younger and had to go through radiation therapy for your own health. This was a side effect of that. If you hadn't done that, then you might not even be here today, so it was the right thing, and it's no one's fault that you can't have children. She was very quick to cheat on you with the plumber after finding out the news. It was very selfish of her to use the pain you both felt as a catalyst to betray your marriage. I know it's hard to realize when you love someone, but you're better off without a person like that in your life. It's a good thing that you're thinking about taking time to be single because that might be the right thing for you to heal from this. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and I hope you're able to open your heart up again to try and trust people. Story 4. I, a 27-year-old male, met my girlfriend, a 28-year-old female, through a dating app about 5 years ago. I had just gotten out of a long relationship with my high school girlfriend, whom I had been with for about 8 years. I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time. I wanted to enjoy my youth and stay single for a while. I had a few flings before I met my girlfriend. When I met her, I thought that's all it was going to be too, but I quickly found myself wanting more with her. There was something that I just thought was really cool about her, and I wanted to spend time with her. After seeing her off and on for hookups for about a month, I asked her on an official date. She agreed to go with me, and from there, our relationship flourished. We had both been in similar situations leading up to that date, and not long after, we both agreed that we would only be seeing each other. I had one other woman on my roster that I was sleeping with at the time, so I contacted her and explained everything, which she understood. I assumed that my girlfriend did the same thing. My girlfriend had to travel between Philadelphia and Baltimore regularly for her work. There were times when she would have to spend a week in Baltimore, and I wouldn't see her at all. It was completely ordinary for her to have to pick up and go there on a moment's notice as well. I knew that she had 2 apartments because of that, and she spent so much time between both cities, essentially living between them. On average, probably, she maybe spent about 60% of a month in Philadelphia with me. I got used to it over time. We would text often when she was away, and we would video chat when she was available. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that she had a completely different life in Baltimore from the way she made it sound when she told me about it. She went there just to work, and she didn't make it seem like she had any friends there or anything really tying her to the city. Last year, she told me that she was going to be in the city around Valentine's Day. We had always made a point to spend holidays together, so I was disappointed. Though we ended up celebrating Valentine's Day early the week before she left. I thought that it would be nice to surprise her anyway. I figured it would be a cute gesture just to show her that I loved her and wanted to take part in her life. I ended up finding her address in Baltimore through her Amazon address profile, and I made my way over. I had a giant teddy bear, chocolates, and some champagne to share with her. When I arrived, I pulled into the parking lot of her apartment, and I walked up to the entrance. I was lucky enough to spot her on her balcony before I even went in. I didn't want to be spotted by her because I wanted everything to be a surprise. So, I ducked next to a large pickup truck. Just a moment later, I saw a man walk out onto the balcony with her. I was shocked to see that he hugged her from the back and kissed her neck. It was clear that she was cheating on me, but I didn't know anything about this person or how long it had been going on. I got back in my car, and I sat there for a while, feeling sick to my stomach while I tried to figure out what to do. I loved my girlfriend, and I saw a future with her that I realized was a complete lie after that. After a while, I noticed both of them leaving the apartment. I composed myself enough to follow them. I didn't know who that guy was, but I needed to find out. They went to a fancy restaurant where they had dinner and some drinks before going back to the apartment. While they were back at her apartment, I decided that I needed to look for the guy online. I searched through her friends list and followers list on her social media, but I didn't see him. However, I found another social media page that belonged to my girlfriend. It was mostly private, but I could still see some things through the second page. I found the guy that I saw her with. His profile was very public, and it was clear that they were in a relationship. It also looked like they worked at the same company together. After digging through all of it, I realized that their relationship had been going on for years. It started shortly after our relationship did. On top of that, it seems like she had an entire other life in Baltimore that I didn't know about. I felt like I had never even known the woman I had been with for 5 years. She had kept half of her life secret from me. Entirely betrayed isn't a strong enough word to explain how I felt when I discovered everything. She hadn't lied to me and led me to believe that her relationship was something more than it was to her. I thought that the guy she was with didn't know about me either. If he had been a secret to me, I didn't see why she wouldn't keep me a secret from him. I needed to expose her. Everybody that she knew in Baltimore needed to know about the entire other life she was living. In the morning, I grabbed the bear and the chocolates that I had bought for her, and I made my way to the office. I was going to play dumb until she had to admit to me that she was dating another man. I walked right up to the receptionist's desk and told her that I was there to see my girlfriend. She was clearly very confused when I told her who it was. The receptionist called for her, but while she was on the phone, I saw her standing next to a cubicle and laughing about something. I told the receptionist that I saw her, and I walked right past the desk. My girlfriend saw me, and the smile fell from her face. I wished her a happy Valentine's Day, and I tried to hand her the bear. Before she could grab it, the man that I saw on the balcony with her stood up from his cubicle and introduced himself. I made sure to introduce myself as her boyfriend. He looked at her and then back at me before he shook his head and told me that I needed to leave her alone. He spoke for her and said that she didn't want anything to do with me and that if I didn't leave her alone, they would file a restraining order. I was even more confused than I was the night before. I told him that I didn't know what he was talking about, that I just came to surprise my girlfriend for Valentine's Day, and he must have had me mistaken for someone else. Then he told me that he was her boyfriend and that I was basically stalking her. My girlfriend stopped him before he threatened me again and then walked out of the office with me. I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she had been seeing the guy there. It was clear from the way he acted that she had told him about me, though she told him that I was some crazy ex who was stalking her. After a few minutes of being outside with her, her other boyfriend walked out and joined her. Before he could say anything else to me, I told him the truth. I explained that she was actively with me in Philadelphia and that I didn't know anything about him. He didn't believe me right away, but then my girlfriend told him the truth too. He stormed off into the office, and my girlfriend followed after him. When he was inside, he made a huge scene about what he discovered. They were yelling at each other in the office while she tried to calm him down and get him to be quiet. She was clearly humiliated by what happened. Personally, I felt very satisfied with the results. Their boss had to come down into the area and tell them to go home for the day. I was standing by the reception desk and watching them, then the other guy she had been with told her he wanted her out of the apartment. I couldn't help but laugh. Maybe I was naive for thinking she had been paying for this other apartment herself, but I was wrong. I chimed in and told her that I wanted her out of the apartment in Philadelphia too. She had nowhere else to go, at least not that we were aware of. I drove back home and told myself I was going to forget all about her. A few days later, when she returned to Philadelphia, she saw that a lot of her things were already packed up and ready for her to take away. She tried pleading with me because she had nowhere else to go, but I wasn't listening to it. On top of that, her boss had let her go for inappropriate behavior in the office. I didn't know if the other guy was also fired because of the fight. I kind of hoped that he wasn't. It seemed like he had been misled by her just as I was, and I didn't want him to suffer because of her. My girlfriend moved her things out of my apartment and into her sister's. After everything, she was left without a job or a home. I just hoped that she got whatever she wanted out of the situation and learned from the consequences. I can't believe you went through something like this. For someone to successfully live a double life as long as your girlfriend did, she had to have been an excellent liar. Knowing that their relationship began around the same time as yours is also very suspicious. I have a lot of questions about how everything started in Baltimore, but in the end, I don't think they'd really matter. I doubt she ever thought either of you would figure out what was going on. Maybe that was why she told the other man that you were some kind of stalker. He might have seen your text messages or phone calls, and she needed to come up with an explanation. It's good that you were able to confront her about it and leave her. I also really hope that the other man still has his job and is able to carry on. I wish both of you well moving past this. Not everyone is as duplicitous as this. I hope you guys are able to find an honest partner in the future.